So as we did in the morning, I'll take the first set of questions and then the second set if there are others and so on.
Or indeed, I realize I've delved into one very specific element of the Internet of Things. So questions about the wider topic of IoT. It's a very hot topic in technology, has been, of course, for about the last decade. So if there are questions more broadly about IoT, I'm happy to jump in on those as well as just the sustainability angle. So happy to field that.
So are there questions? Yes, we have the first question here. Okay. Behind,
microwaves,
then in the middle,
microphone's heading backwards.
In front. Yes, in the middle of the hall, and then to the left, to my right, sorry, to his left.
Yeah.
1, 2.
Okay, Deja, you start, and then my brother will second.
Thank you very much for the good presentation. I think there were two presenters. There was I don't see the red jacket. I was actually interested in the initial presentation also when it comes to leadership structure within government, when you're leading the government transformation, digital transformation agenda. I think the issue of coordination within government invites proper leadership. But I wanted to get a bit more detail on the structure of that leadership. How does it look like in the UK? But for Matt here...
It might be a tough question for me to answer, I'm afraid.
I mean, it's for us. I think we'll be able to catch up with it because the first presenter already mentioned that. But in your case, listening to the potential dividends from IoTs, if you notice, a lot of the gentlemen and ladies in this sitting, most of us come from either sub-Saharan countries or the Pacific, and the challenges that we are faced with is making sure that our people have access to basic means of survival. So IoT is without roads, for example. You're talking about irrigation without farmland. Or if there is, the manner in which it's exploited is slightly different. So how do you think such interventions can be nested in the context of a developing country? That's really the challenge of most ladies and gentlemen sitting here. Thank you.
And it's a very good question.
Maybe you take the second question.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, the second question. We take 3 questions.
Sure,
And then you
no, that's fine.
1, 2.
Okay.
1, 2. I don't know if it's on. Okay. My name is Daud Suleiman. I'm the Director General for Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, coming from a sub-Saharan country as my brother DG Ezra. Internet of Things will result in more appetite for numbering resources, IP addresses. We are facing a shortage of IPv4. And as we go through the process of digital transformation, it means we need more IPv4 numbering resources. Given that Africa is facing quite a number of serious issues around the IPv4 cases, I'm sure you are aware of the issues around AfriNIC and numbering resources for Africa. In your view, what's the way out for Africa and developing countries as we push for more and more of digital transformation in an environment where the numbering resources are depleting? And what are your thoughts about Africa and IPv4? Thank you.
Okay, the last question.
Thank you so much. Tokozani Chimbe, also from Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority. My question would just be an extension from what the DG had just posed. in your opinion, what are the building blocks? What would you consider building blocks or consideration for policy that can actually drive maybe or drive IoTs in developing countries? And I would also like to have more examples or resource places where we can go and see IoTs that have actually been used in agriculture.
Okay. Right, good set of questions. Thank you for those. Okay, should we take probably the first and third ones together because they're more closely related. Okay, so use cases in developing markets. Yes, of course, there is a perception, and probably correctly so, that this is something of a nice to have rather than an absolute essential. But there are a number of use cases that we see in developing countries that where it absolutely makes sense, because a lot of this is about saving costs anyway. It's saving scarce resources in terms of water consumption. These don't need to be particularly expensive or sophisticated use cases. And we see quite a lot of fleet management deployments that happens in quite a number of developing markets, just in terms of understanding, okay, where are my trucks, when are they likely to get where they're going to. Now, this might not be done in a spectacularly formal way or in a very expensive way, but putting a tracking device in a vehicle is not an unusual dynamic. And then we see things like, there was a very interesting, I forget the name of the company now, but there was a company in Kenya, I believe, that was providing connected batteries, combination battery and TV receiver. And they were being tracked because they were charged on a monthly basis. You take it back to the central depot and they recharge it and they send it back out. Obviously, a product line that is specifically aimed at anybody who's off grid, because obviously, if you're on the grid, it's less of a relevant thing. So there are lots of use cases that are equally applicable, if not more applicable, in developing markets than elsewhere. And there are also a lot of use cases where it's very much an international market, shall we say. Things like oil and gas and the mineral sector and these types of things. So there it tends to be large organisations that have the ability to deploy into territories anywhere in the world, regardless of whether it's a developing country or not. But I think the question is always, where's the upfront cost? Who deals with the upfront cost? And the good thing about the increasingly wide adoption of IoT is that the price of these elements has come down quite significantly. The cost of particularly the hardware has become so much cheaper that it becomes a much more viable opportunity just by virtue of the scale of the market. So there's a lot of examples. On the agriculture question, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there are many. Brazil, particularly, is a good example. We've produced a report that's specifically around agriculture, but not me personally. But if you want to drop me a line offline, then I'm happy to share some examples of where that's been done. Typically, a lot of the time, it's deploying a private network, and now that sounds very complex and expensive, but actually there are technologies available in the form of particularly LoRaWAN, a relatively new arrival in terms of the network access technologies that can be used in any number of agriculture use cases and is very cheap to operate, runs in the unlicensed spectrum. You don't need to pay a network operator for providing those services. And the final one was probably the most difficult one for me, frankly, Numbering resources is actually, you've probably got less of an issue with numbering resources than you might do with IP addresses. In terms of volume of cellular-based IoT connected devices, today it's something like 10% of devices, of cellular connected devices, are IoT devices. Therefore, the numbering resource implications of that are actually not too challenging. It grows to be something like 40% in the next 10 years, but still, it's not an order of magnitude growth in terms of the number resources. IP, I will have to plead a little bit of ignorance on what the specific market conditions might be on IPv4 versus IPv6 in developing markets. I don't know. I can't comment on that off the top of my head, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. Want to take a second set of questions? I would start with Joel.
Oh, actually, while I think about it, there's one other one to throw in there. There's often an opportunity to, in terms of technology adoption in developing markets, there's often the opportunity to leapfrog a set of technology. So payment terminals is one that's cropped up quite a lot, being able to take card payments. Now, I realize that's more a middle-income country kind of a topic, but say in Brazil, we've seen the proliferation of millions of payment terminals using cellular connectivity, and we count that as an IoT device. And so you have certain use cases like that, which you get a great benefit through not having to handle cash, and it's applicable in some circumstances, some use cases, and potentially quite significant numbers. Sorry. Just another one that sprung to mind. But
sorry, you have the floor, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Hatton, for the good presentation. Some of the ideas are quite exciting. But I want to ask, you indicated that smart buildings generally generate up to 20% carbon, contribute towards 20% of carbon emission. And you said that if we do smart buildings, then we can reduce by around 10% to 10%, something like that. Now, what I'm interested in, when you look at the investment that we are going to make on smart building, for example, the total cost, how is it compared with the emission, or rather the cost that we are going to save? Not only in smart buildings, even in transport sector, you indicated that transport sector accounts for something like 35%, 30%, and it can be reduced to 10 to 15%. Now, what is the investment looking like when you're investing in these areas? Is it going to outweigh the energy that we are going to save? Thank you.
Do you just want to take a quick shot?
Yeah, I can have a go at that one straight away. In terms of the energy saving, first off, well, the energy saving pays back in almost no time, generally speaking, because the cost of production and distribution of those items is next to nothing compared to the energy saving. The more relevant thing, I think, and which you referred to, is the financial cost. Okay, how do I get how long will the financial payback take me? That will be completely use case dependent, obviously, but I refer back to what I mentioned about these solutions and capabilities are getting cheaper and cheaper all the time. You know, if you wanted to implement a fleet management solution 10 years ago, it might have cost you 10 times as much as it costs today, and therefore the payback time is much less. Now, if you are running a one-man delivery truck or woman, delivery truck business, does it make sense? Almost certainly not, regardless of what country you're in. So there's just a question of scale and the economics. What we've seen also coming through, if indeed the problem is just upfront spend, we've seen quite a lot of shared risk models. Things like I mentioned, the street lighting systems. So rather than the city paying for the street lighting to be upgraded and improved itself, there are organisations that will pay for that upgrade and then do it as a shared revenue model with the municipality or utility, depending on who's responsible for the street lighting. So there are even initiatives, and there are companies that specifically do that kind of thing that are not related actually to the to rolling the systems out. They're just set up to pay for IoT-related deployments, and then they take a cut of the benefit savings that come through to the organisations that are deploying it. But in all of these things, you kind of got to weigh off all of these things, and in every country there are use cases that don't make sense, and there are use cases that do make sense. And where you draw the line between those things, it very much depends on where you are and what the application is. Sorry, I can't be more specific about that, but yeah, it's the typical analyst answer, which is it depends.
Thank you. That's an excellent answer. The last expressions, it depends.
Yeah.
It makes sense to one and not to the other. That's actually what I was expecting to hear.
So I try not to use that as an answer very often because it's very much a cop-out answer, but sometimes you have to use that answer, right?
Right, that's correct. We are talking to some countries that are, sub-Saharan countries, and when you're talking about carbon emission and the investment for carbon emission reduction, and knowing how much sub-Saharan African countries are contributing to the reduction of carbon emission to make the planet hospitable to everybody. And then you weigh that, how much they're going to use to invest instead in other areas and have to invest in IoT, it poses the problem of it depends. And I just wanted to raise that so you understand why the question was posed.
Completely. But if you're a mall in downtown Nairobi, there will be air conditioning in that mall, right? So there will certainly be a use case associated with that. And if you also think of it as just reducing the cost of getting access to some of these services, everybody wants air conditioning, right? And so if you can produce a more efficient way of delivering air conditioning, it reduces the cost and therefore it makes it more accessible to more people. Now, that has a knock-on negative effect on the environment, but there's we have to sort of accept that everybody in the world will want air conditioning, and why shouldn't they?
Well, in some places that are very hot, air conditioning is good.
Yeah.
In other places that are very cold, air conditioning is. That is why it depends.
Completely does.
Please, my colleague from
Thank you, Matt. My name is Usman Aliu from Nigeria. My question is if there is anywhere you can point to for us to help guide the development of regulations for the IoT. Although it's not intended to stifle innovation, because we, for instance, in Nigeria, we're looking at it from the perspective of type approval, right from the type approval process of some of these wearables, the IoT devices, trying to make sure we try to put some guidelines on those as they are coming in. So but we are also careful not to stifle competition. We have requests now even from satellite companies, mobile satellite providers wanting to provide IoT services. which can be asset tracking, maybe vehicle tracking, even human tracking, cattle tracking to know where they are and others. So, but then we also see the issue of cybersecurity, the points of failure or points of weakness that could also be coming with them. So we just caught in between how to really bring out the minimum requirements for IoTs, considering that you don't have like a global standard for it. People keep producing them from different angles. And I give an example also, like even someone has a smart home, you have an inverter at home, and you have a provider that gives you an app that you can check and see the level of charge on that. So he has some access, to some data and also to even know if that house is occupied or not based on the utilization of the electricity using the IoT devices that are there monitoring the charging system. So it's really an issue of what do we do or where can we easily look at regulating them without stifling the innovation prospects that are abound in it. Thank you. Great.
So I just go with that one. And I do apologise. The lady at the back asked a question about regulation as well, and I didn't answer that one. But so apologies for that. But yeah, let's tackle it now. There's a few angles to regulation relating to IoT. There's a kind of a vertical and a horizontal aspect to it. The vertical it will be around compliance with whatever the rules are in particular vertical sectors. So whether that's smart grid or healthcare or any number of things like that. Now that's probably not something we can tackle today because it's very vertically specific. It'll be country by country. It depends, right? But the horizontal, well, there's a few angles to it. Yes, one will be about device certification and an approvals process, which you certainly need something, not least to make sure devices that are using unlicensed spectrum are running in the right bands and that kind of thing. Best practice? Off the top of my head, I don't know. No, I'm not. I'm really not sure. Sorry about that. The other angles of regulation might be related to licensing for mobile connectivity. So, how do you ensure that network that providers of IoT connectivity are complying with the know your customer rules that you might have? I don't know what the rules are in various countries, but often there are those rules. Rules to do with taxation, rules to do with being regulated within the country, and it's very common for countries to say, you know what, you want no permanent roaming. We won't accept a permanently roaming device into our territory. It has to be a localized device with a local profile that's run on a local core network. And that's pretty common, and there are technologies around to enable the localization onto networks. So that will probably be one to look at. What else did I note down? Cybersecurity rules. Yeah. Well, there are lots of countries with sets of cybersecurity rules, and it's pretty common for everybody to sort of crib everyone else's homework. Right? Take a look at what the rules are in various territories, because at the moment, IoT security rules, and there's been a number have come out in US and Japan and Australia and various places recently. But the main focus of those has been on sort of don't do really stupid things. That's more or less been the rules. Don't have a hard-coded password. Make sure you've got just a very basic level of security associated with those IoT devices. And I think most of those will be relatively easy to kind of pick up and drop in. EU as well, of course. I mean, they'll tend to be a good place to start when thinking about those cybersecurity rules, but not spectacularly heavy in terms of the obligations. And it also means, of course, any devices from Europe would then be supported in country. Sorry, I can't be more specific, but I think that's probably as deep as I can go on most of those, unless I'm forgetting something. Don't think so. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe just to add, I think with regards to standards, the International Telecommunications Union (ITU) has been doing some work on IoT standards. Even on issues with regards to cybersecurity, a lot of work has been done as well. The presentations that we had in the morning dive into it without talking a lot about the standards, but they are there. And I think it's an opportunity for the CTO to, during its assistance program to membership, could take on this and then assist more, even with regards to the giant of Africa. And that's something that I think the SG has noted very well, and we can go on it. Are there other questions? But again, as we're saying, when you have all devices talking to all devices and people talking to devices and devices talking to people and everything is going on around the place, you may just one day get to a store and you want to buy a beer and you're informed that the insurance company doesn't authorize you to drink a beer because a couple of weeks ago the doctor said that your level of something has gone up or come down, and it can go on and on and on. And when does it stop? When do you have the right to do what? When IoT devices are beginning to decide what is good for you. Or you could just sit here and you're going out and the IoT device that is controlling out to the street says, no, the temperature is too low for your health condition, so you have to stay until tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, privacy becomes a huge issue here, right? What do you allow anybody to do with this data that might be being created? Now, we must, of course, be conscious of the fact that people have shown a significant willingness through social media, particularly, to share their own personal information on an unheralded scale. In fact, way more than probably as a result of a lot of these IoT devices. But and in fact, the question of regulation around privacy and personal data and identifiable personal data tends to be one of the major ones that we think of when we're thinking about IoT. And you know, I'm probably more familiar with, say, the rules in the EU than most other places. But if something is personally identifiable data, then it's very strict, the rules of what you're allowed to do with that personally identifiable data. And that's not just something that's incredibly personal, like if I've got a connected heart rate monitor. It's all the way through to I mentioned fleet management quite a lot during the discussions. If you're a fleet management, if you happen to be a driver, if it's possible for that for the vehicle that you've been driving to then be identified with you, well, the fleet management data is considered to be personally identifiable information. So it's a very broad definition of this PII, and the rules are that effectively you have control of that data. You can ask for that data to be deleted. You can ask to see any data that any organisation might have on you, and so the idea is that as much as possible, the control of that data must reside with the individual, and they must have the ability to scrap it. And another example would be connected toothbrush. Right? People talk about connected toothbrush. Why anybody would want a connected toothbrush, I have no idea. But it's one of those use cases that comes up from time to time. But if you've got dental insurance, and they find out that you haven't been using your connected toothbrush, well, you know, you may be in some trouble. But as long as you maintain these strict rules about, okay, this is my data, I can do with it what I like, and if I choose to share it with somebody, then I can share it with somebody. Because equally validly, if I'm someone who cleans my teeth rigorously 3 times a day using my connected toothbrush, maybe I want my dental insurance provider to be aware of that. I realize I'm going into down a very specific niche area, but the same might be true of wellness. You know, I wear one of these tracker watches. Mm-hmm. I get my 10,000 paces a day. Would I want that shared with my insurance company? Well, my old insurance company that I had, actually, they asked me, will I be happy sharing it? And I said, yeah, fine, because I know I get my pace count in. So in that respect, maybe it's not just about, I don't want anybody to get access to data. Maybe sometimes you do, but it's about control. Who can I'm allowed to make these decisions.
Thank you. The privacy and security, these are challenging issues. What we've been trying to do so far has been that I want to communicate with you, and so I suspect that there is a third person, and so we protect the channel so that a third person cannot get to it, to know what we're saying.
Yep.
A more challenging problem today is I want to talk with you. I don't trust the channel, and I don't trust you.
Yeah.
So how do I make sure that the information that I'm communicating, I'm X and I'm communicating the information to Y? How should we set up the security provisions such that I don't trust the channel and I don't trust the person that I'm talking with? So the kind of trust framework that has to be built. For instance, when you go online, you want to buy from Mr. Amazon. You've never met Mr. Amazon before, but for some reason you start transmitting very secret information, your bank information.
Yeah.
And we go on that kind of trust, and it goes on. So far, the idea has been, we had a presentation a short while ago from Microsoft in which it was said that they have introduced multifactorial authentication, could go through passwords and fingerprints and eyelid scans and all sorts of things, biometric parameters and so on. But still, identity cloning is something that goes on. So the challenges are there, lots of them. But as I said in the morning, challenges are opportunities for progress. And so we shouldn't be scared of the challenges ahead. Maybe before we close, or before we move to the networking break, I was just wondering if the SJ has something to. Okay, so I would like to thank you for the presentation. Thank the delegates for.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.